For more on the Supreme Court and the day's top political stories, Natalie Brand, Scott MacFarlane, and Sophia Cai. And join me now. Natalie is a Washington-based reporter for CBS News. Scott, as you well know, is a congressional correspondent for CBS News. And Sophia is a congressional reporter for Axios. Natalie, Justice Stephen Breyer, now officially retired. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, now officially on the bench after being sworn in. Today's rulings were announced. What is their impact likely to be, and a little bit more maybe on the rulings themselves?
Hi, Major. This was such a historic day for the U.S. Supreme Court with the swearing-in ceremony after such a divisive blockbuster term for the current court. But let's start with now Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who, of course, not only becomes the nation's first Black woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court, but she also brings the interesting and unique perspective of being a former federal public defender and also a working mother. I spoke today to the dean of Howard University School of Law, who says she believes that Justice Jackson will be labeled as one of the justices who is the conscience of the court, who can speak to the challenges of the everyday person. And while the ideological makeup of this court will not change, the current 6-3 conservative majority split, we know that the impact that a justice brings through their experience and their background can make a difference. How the justices interact with each other can shape decisions on big cases and also some of the lesser known cases, but those that still have a big impact on people's lives. So that is what everyone will be watching for next term as the High Court prepares to take up more hot-button divisive issues from voting rights to affirmative action next term, Major.
Sophia, as you well know, immigration grabs headlines, generates near constant debate in this country. Break down the ramifications of today's ruling on Remain in Mexico.
Right, Major. So this came as a bit of a surprise for the administration in some ways, considering the other legal battles that it's lost. But what it means is that it can now end this policy which forces asylum seekers to remain in Mexico when they're waiting their court cases. And the Department of Homeland Security described this as bringing a slim semblance of sanity in this moment. And it also means that Biden is able to follow through on one of his campaign promises to end the Remain in Mexico policy. But another reality is that there is still a buildup of migrants trying to cross the border, and that'll be another issue that Republicans, both on the campaign trail and in Congress, will be trying to attack the administration on.
Natalie, tell us about this Florida judge who has blocked a state law banning abortions after 15 weeks. The significance?
Yeah, so the state's Florida's supposed ban, 15-week ban on abortion was supposed to take effect tomorrow. But after a hearing held earlier this week, a Florida judge has now put a temporary hold on that from taking effect. And this kind of follows the strategy that we're seeing right now in the wake of the huge ruling that overturned Roe versus Wade of individual state-level challenges that are putting temporary injunctions or pausing temporarily some of these abortion bans or trigger laws in conservative states that are trying to implement them. So the significance here is that for the time being, it looks like the current rules in Florida, which allows abortion up to 24 weeks, will continue. And really at the heart of this case was the groups challenging the new ban, saying that it is at odds with the Florida state constitution and the privacy provisions within the state's constitution. And that's an argument that we're also hearing in some of these challenges. And when you look at Florida, as CBS News has reported, we are seeing a number of women from other southeastern states with restrictions in place traveling to Florida to try to seek services. So this is an interesting state to watch. And again, we'll have to wait and see what the ultimate outcome is of some of these state legal challenges that are still working their way through the system. Ultimately, this one will likely go to the Florida Supreme Court, Major.
So many things shifting, so many ramifications after the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Scott, to you. So on the surface, the Supreme Court's decision against the EPA seems to be a blow to President Biden's stated goal of fighting climate change as aggressively as he can, using all of his regulatory powers. What does it mean for the White House politically? And if anything, what are progressives saying about it?
Well, major progressives and congressional Democrats are pretty clear. They're disappointed. What's much less clear is what in the world they're going to do about it. The Congressional Progressive Caucus issued a statement today calling this Supreme Court ruling catastrophic, but they've also been pushing for executive action on ending fossil fuel subsidies and executive orders to reduce new leases for fossil fuels. Right now, anything that limits availability of fossil fuels threatens to further raise gas prices, which in this cycle, this election year, is political kryptonite. So the next step is far from clear. We also heard from the Senate Majority Leader, who said this was a dangerous, misguided ruling from the court. The Democratic chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House also criticized it. But there aren't 50 votes, much less 60 votes, for new legislation to address fossil fuel usage, energy policy, the climate crisis. The Congress has shown itself unable to muster a majority vote in the Senate on bold climate change legislation, much less the filibuster-proof 60. So, yes, there's consistent outrage from liberals, congressional Democrats. There's just no path forward of what to do next.
So President Biden wrapped up the NATO summit in Madrid today, but not without weighing in on some domestic political matters, including answering a question about whether he favored, and he said he did, doing away with the Senate's filibuster powers if it meant creating a way to create federal protections for Roe versus Wade. Let's take a listen.
The most important thing to be clear about is we have to change. I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade in the law, and the way to do that is to make sure the Congress votes to do that. And if the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. It should be, we provide an exception for this, require an exception to the filibuster for this action to deal with the Supreme Court decision.
Sophia, I'm going to get to you in a minute, but Natalie, I need to say goodbye to you because I know you have other important work to do. So, Sophia, what are you hearing about the realistic chances, and we must emphasize realistic chances, that there can be any so-called carve-out in the Senate filibuster rules, even for abortion?
You're right, Major. There's virtually no realistic chance that this could happen. And here's why. It's because both these two Democratic senators, Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Kyrsten Sinema, have not changed their position about preserving the filibuster in light of both the ruling and in light of Biden's new stance on his support of the carve-out. And to be clear, they are both opposed to gutting the filibuster on any issue, including reproductive rights. So Biden doesn't even have 50 Democratic votes, not to mention the 10 Republican votes he would also have to pass a 50-50 Congress. And as an indication of just how unlikely this is, a top Democratic senator, Senator Durbin, said today when he was asked about it at a gaggle, he had said, "You know the numbers," and this is a quote, and it's an indication of just how perilous our control of Congress is.
So, January 6th committee member Adam Kinzinger is one of two on that panel, was on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert last night, and he discussed what part of the hearings he has found most disconcerting.
I am frustrated that, for instance, Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino have refused to come in and talk to Congress. We have the power of subpoena similar to what a court has, and the Justice Department has failed to indict them for that. And so all it does is send a message. You just have to resist the Select Committee, and you may be able to resist all penalties.
Scott, you're all over this story. What sense do you have that Congress will ask or lean or in some way importune or suggest to the Justice Department that it do more to help the committee get its business done to its satisfaction?
Oh, we ask the committee members that question every day unequivocally, Major. We're going to keep asking that question. We spoke to Jamie Raskin yesterday, and he responded that the committee's mission is to investigate how this happened, why it happened, how to prevent it in the future, to do a 360-degree review, not to make a specific criminal referral. But we also spoke to one of the committee's former investigators, who also happens to be a former member of Congress, Denver Riggleman, and asked him that same question. Take a listen. Are they trying to land some of this message directly with the Justice Department?
Of course they are. And I think once there's pure sort of data sharing between the DOJ and Congress, I think you're going to see an expansion of this investigation. Once Congress wraps up, I would hope that they're starting to share data now, but they're talking directly to the DOJ. And by the way, what is a fact right now, Scott, if I may lean forward a little bit? The fact is that President Trump's judgment has been called into question on a level we've never seen, I think, for another president since Nixon.
So here's two things we can say with certainty. We know in their court filings, this committee has used the language of the Justice Department. They have already accused former President Trump of obstructing an official proceeding. Kind of a weird term. That's the federal charge they've used in dozens of Capitol riot cases. But also, the Justice Department is watching. They're listening. They're monitoring. A criminal referral might be redundant. Major.
Scott and Sophia, lots of questions, lots of information, and we thank you.